you're going to see a little video up there of Coco from Coco's foster. Coco is an older, they're 26 years old, Dusky head conure, which is about the size, it's a little bit bigger than a green cheek and a little bit smaller than a sun conure, if anyone is familiar with those two sides. They were surrendered to Mickaboo along with another bird who has now been adopted, who is not a conure, just two different kinds of birds. They had older couple who were moving and unfortunately were not able to take their birds with them. So they trusted Mickaboo with these birds to help us find good forever homes for these two.
So we must know quite a lot about Coco given their age and history. Do we know if she's a boy or a girl? And I also wonder if our audience has any questions, because certainly type them in the Q&A chat.
Yeah, so we do know for sure that Coco is a girl, and we know this in the most definitive way possible because they have laid an egg in the past, and that's pretty indicative.
Oh my, yes.
Yeah, there's definitely no question when there's an egg in the cage. No question at all. Yeah, we know a ton about Coco. It's always really nice when a bird gets surrendered and we have a very comprehensive bit of information on everything there is to know about a bird. So for example, we know their diet, we know their like full medical history, we know that they were covered at night, we know they used to have a night cage, we know pretty much everything about them.
Is this, and this looks like they're in their cage during this video, right? It looks like it's pretty, big cage.
When this video was taken, Coco had only recently arrived. Like even right now, I think they've been about 2 months with their current foster. So they were a little bit shy at first, and they did not want to come out of their cage at first. They were almost exclusively in the cage, but over time, and you'll see right there, over time, they would leave the door open while they were supervised, and Coco would start exploring out onto the top of the cage, onto perches placed on the outside of the cage. And now they will play around. They've started stepping up. They've started, being friendly around the family. And we kind of say that basically every week, the amount of time they are willing to be away from their cage increases as they become more and more comfortable.
Wow. So I'm going to let the audience behind the curtain for a second here and say it sounds like Coco's made some pretty big improvements in getting comfortable, even in the few weeks since we did a practice for this adoption fair.
Oh yeah, it's always really nice, and you do see this a lot. Birds get very uncomfortable when they move. It is a really stressful thing moving from, like, even for humans, moving from place to place is really stressful, but for birds who maybe don't really understand what's going on, it's super stressful. They were almost a complete shut-in when they first arrived. Like when I first spoke to the foster after they arrived, they were like, I'm not sure how tame they're because they're completely in their cage all the time. They do not want to come out. And just every week has been a really nice update as they become more and more comfortable, are more willing to, interact with the foster. And they're really just coming into themselves again, which is really nice to see.
That's wonderful. That's really great news. So we do have an audience question here. Is her egg laying chronic, and how do you stop it? So this might be a great time for us to talk a little bit about hormone management.
Yeah, hormone management. So no, their egg laying is not chronic. They haven't laid one with the foster or anything like that. It was just in the past they have laid eggs. That said, while we can't spay or neuter a bird for reasons which I feel are fairly obvious based on the size, it's basically a matter of minimizing things that can trigger hormonal behaviors. So for birds, that means getting 10 to 12 hours of sleep a night that is not disturbed, because during breeding season, they would be awake longer effectively. So longer days mean time to, start making a nest, laying eggs, which is actually another thing you can do to avoid hormonal behavior. A lot of bird owners want to give their bird a nest because, of course, birds go in nests. But this is actually a really hormonal thing. So you don't want to give them a nest. You don't want to give them nesting materials. You don't want to give them one of those snuggle huts or anything, because a lot of conures actually are cavity nesters. A lot of them don't build the kind of stick and twig nests that you would imagine when you think of a nest. They go into small cavities and lay their nests in there.
Yeah, budgies do that too. And we once had a rescue that someone started with 4 budgies and called us when they had 80, and it was a cavity nesting thing. So yeah, that's
this cage actually
definitely
gets
something to stay away from. Anyone who's got one of those snuggle huts who's watching right now, please reconsider. We'll be happy to talk to you about other fun things you can do instead.
Yeah, this nest actually, or sorry, this cage actually gives a really good view of a like nestless environment. You have a whole bunch of toys, you've got the swing, you've got wood bits they can chew on. They actually have these really nice natural sticks that run across the cage that the bird can walk along, which is always really nice. They also jut out the front so that when the bird is out, Coco can sit on the like outside part of the stick and can perch. And yeah, they will just sleep in the night on one of those sticks. It's not an issue. They don't need a tent or a hut or anything to sleep in.
Right.
They're just used to sleeping on top of one of those sticks.
So speaking about this nice cage setup, and I'm looking at some of the toys in the background. Does Coco have any favorites? Favorite toys? So
Coco, along with, as far as I am concerned, pretty much every conure ever, is a big fan of bells. Because yeah, every conure I've ever interacted with is huge on bells. They also really like cat balls that have like the little bells inside. They love picking those up and throwing those around, and they make a nice jangle noise. With those, though, you do have to be careful and make sure that the toy doesn't end up broken or that the bird can't get access to those bells, because those bells are not terribly bird safe. They can get their beaks stuck in them, but they're fun to play as long as they're supervised.
Yeah, and that's the kind of bells that I had in the budgie cage too. And I had meant to mention that I do try and inspect that bell at least weekly and make sure it's not getting any damage. And conure beaks are stronger than budgie beaks.
Oh yeah, conure beaks can be very strong, and you will see them. They're great escape artists. Coco, not so much. Coco's been pretty, well, Coco currently mostly wants to, they do like their cage still. So they're not trying to get out of it. But with any conure, or really any bird, you do want to be inspecting the toys to make sure that there aren't, for example, and there's one of those bells going off the back of the cage. You do want to make sure that the toys are all intact, that there's no chunks coming off them, that there's not anything the bird can get tangled in, for example.
So one thing we haven't talked about, and very thematic with that hand in the corner of the picture, what is Coco's diet like?
So Coco originally came in, they were eating Supreme pellets, and they are a fantastic eater. They love fruits, they love grains, they love everything. They are just, there are some birds where they're very picky and they're like, I want this one food and I refuse to eat anything else. That said, Coco does not have that problem. They're eating their pellets as like their main diet. They really enjoy a little bit of almond, a little bit of cashew is kind of their main treat, the thing they really love if they're doing training or anything like that, or if they're doing a good behavior that the foster wants to like reward. It's generally a little bit of almond or a little bit of cashew, and they love that, which I believe is what they're eating right now.
Looks like it. So we're coming toward the end of our time with Coco. So I'd like to remind the audience, if you have any questions, type them in the Q&A. And do you have any fun stories about Coco that you'd like to share with us?
I have the cutest story. Coco absolutely loves, and this is a behavior we believe from the previous owner, Coco loves getting kissed on the head. And they will like bend their head down, just put their head down, and then basically be begging for you to give a little, just a little mwah on the back of their head or above the back of their head. They absolutely love that. And at night, they will not go to bed. They will absolutely refuse to go to bed until you have done this several times to prove how much you love them. So they will just walk up and put their head down, and you'll go, mwah, and then they'll look up at you, and then they'll put their head back down. That means they want more. And you got to do it a couple times until they are, they've satisfied that you've given them enough love and attention. And then they'll go back inside their cage, which is so cute. Another really just cute, fun one. Sometimes if they've decided they haven't been out long enough, because the foster was trying to work within Coco's own needs. So Coco would start establishing that they wanted to be out longer because they would go to put Coco back in the cage and Coco just refused to step up into the cage. Coco would just be like, no, thank you, and just grip on harder with their nails until they were withdrawn. And then they were like, okay.
So Coco sounds like a bird who knows what she wants and has a lot of really nice behaviors and is pretty healthy and getting more comfortable in her new home.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
One thing I should mention is that while Coco is technically an older bird, they're 26 years old, which sounds very old, especially for a conure. Dusky head conures, it's hard to tell. A lot of bird lifespans are very inconsistent and there's not a lot of good data, but they can easily live to be 40 years old with good diet and good care. So they're not elderly, they're just older.
Sure. Seasoned.
Experienced. They're very experienced in demanding kisses from people and collecting almonds as payment for their cuteness.
Well, thank you so much for introducing us to Coco.
Thank you very much for letting me talk about Coco, because I think they are the cutest little bird.